On the morning of my birthday, I woke up feeling happy and excited. I had spent weeks planning everything, from the decorations to the cake. I imagined everyone smiling and having fun, celebrating with me. My friends and family were supposed to be there, and I couldn't wait to see their faces when they saw all the little touches I had prepared. Corinne, my older sister, was already downstairs when I came out. She smiled, but something in her eyes made me uneasy. She had always been competitive with me, but I tried to ignore it, thinking today was supposed to be about me. My parents were busy setting up the table, and everything looked perfect: the balloons, the flowers, and the cake in the center with my name on it. As guests started arriving, I felt the excitement building. Everyone hugged me, complimented the decorations, and told me how beautiful everything looked. I was smiling so much that I almost forgot my worries. But then Corinne began making little comments. At first, they seemed innocent, but I noticed the way she looked at me, the smirk that appeared when she thought no one was watching. I felt a small pang of doubt, but I told myself I was overthinking it. The party continued, laughter and chatter filling the room. I tried to enjoy myself, but there was a tension in the air I couldn't shake. Corinne moved around gracefully, making sure to insert herself into every conversation, subtly making me feel smaller. She asked questions that seemed normal, but I realized later they were designed to highlight mistakes I had made or embarrassing stories from my past. By the time the cake was ready, I could feel the unease growing. Something about the way she watched me, the way she smiled at certain comments, made me realize that this day might not go as I imagined. It was supposed to be a happy celebration, but a shadow of jealousy and quiet cruelty hung over the room. Even in a room full of people who cared for me, I began to understand that Corinne had always wanted to outshine me, and today might be the day she would finally succeed. When it was time for me to open my presents, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. That's when Corinne stepped in, smiling sweetly at everyone. At first, she acted like she was helping me, asking me to show a gift I had just unwrapped. I didn't notice anything wrong until she started pointing out little mistakes I had made while opening it, making them sound like huge blunders. A few relatives chuckled quietly, and I felt my face flush. I tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But then she went further, mentioning embarrassing stories from my childhood, stories I had never told anyone at the party. Guests exchanged looks, and I could hear whispered laughter around the room. Every comment made me feel smaller, as if I were the joke she wanted everyone to see. I froze, unsure how to respond. My heart pounded in my chest, and a heavy weight settled in my stomach. I had trusted her, smiled at her, and now she was making me feel humiliated in front of everyone I cared about. It wasn't just teasing, it was cruel, calculated, and public. I wanted to disappear, to shrink out of the room, but I couldn't. For the first time, I saw the full depth of her jealousy. All those little moments over the years, the teasing and underhanded comments, suddenly made sense. This wasn't accidental, this was her plan. My own sister had carefully crafted a way to make me look foolish on the one day that was supposed to be about me. Shock mixed with anger, and betrayal settled deep in my chest. I wanted to cry, to scream, but I held back. I realized that nothing I did could stop her in that moment, and everyone's eyes on me made it even worse. The laughter, the whispers, the pointed looks, it all burned into me. I understood then that Corinne had always been jealous of me, and today was her chance to prove herself, to make me feel small and insignificant. It hurt more than I could explain, but a part of me knew this moment would change everything between us forever. After the party ended, the guests slowly left, leaving the house quiet and empty. The excitement of the day had vanished, replaced by a heavy feeling in my chest. I sank into the couch, my hands shaking slightly, still replaying everything Corinne had said. The whispers, the laughter, the way everyone had looked at me, it all felt like a weight pressing down. I looked at my parents, hoping for comfort or even just a small word of support. But they seemed distracted, moving around to clean up, talking politely about the party's success. No one acknowledged what had just happened. I felt invisible, like my pain didn't matter, and the sense of being unsupported made everything hurt even more. Corinne came over, smiling casually as if nothing had happened. She complimented the decorations, made small talk, and even teased me lightly about minor things in a way that felt innocent on the surface. But I could see through it. I could see that her casual attitude was intentional, meant to make me feel smaller and powerless. It was her way of showing she had won without saying a word. Sitting there, I began thinking back to the past. How many times had she made little remarks that left me doubting myself? How often had she subtly undermined me in front of others, masked as jokes or advice? I remembered moments from childhood, school, and family gatherings, times when her competitiveness had shown itself quietly, almost harmlessly, but always leaving me a little weaker. I realized that her cruelty wasn't random. It was calculated and persistent. Corinne had been jealous for years, and this birthday event was just the latest, most public example. The betrayal cut deep because it came from someone I had trusted, someone I had believed loved me as a sister should. For the first time, I understood that I couldn't ignore her behavior anymore. I had to accept the reality of who she was and the fact that she would never change. That realization hurt, but it also sparked a tiny flicker of determination inside me. If I couldn't rely on others to defend me, I would have to find a way to stand up for myself, and eventually, I would find a way to turn this pain into my own strength. Later that evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I found Corinne in the kitchen, sipping tea and humming softly. My chest tightened as I approached her. I needed answers, or at least to make her understand how much she had hurt me. "Why did you do that today?" I asked, my voice shaking but firm. Corinne looked at me, her smile calm and unbothered. "Do what?" she said casually, pretending she didn't know what I meant. I felt a flash of anger but held myself steady. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You made me look like a fool on my own birthday. Don't act like it was nothing." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Marissa, you're too sensitive. It was just a little fun." Everyone laughed, and honestly, it was harmless. "You need to learn to take a joke." Her words hit me like a punch. She wasn't sorry. She didn't feel guilty. She was mocking me, dismissing my feelings as if they didn't matter. The pain inside me deepened, sharper than before. I realized she had never truly cared about me or my happiness. Every act of help or kindness over the years had been mixed with her need to compete, to show that she was better, smarter, or more capable. The betrayal was total, it wasn't just today. It had been years in the making. But in the middle of that hurt, something shifted. A fire ignited inside me, quiet at first but growing stronger. I would not let her break me. I would not allow her to control how people saw me or how I felt about myself. I understood now that I needed to protect my own peace, my own dignity. A thought began to form in my mind, steady and deliberate. If she could manipulate and humiliate me openly, I could find a way to turn the tables. Not with cruelty, but with intelligence and patience. I would prove she underestimated me. I would rise stronger and show her that her games could never define me. That night, I left the kitchen with my resolve clear. The humiliation had hurt me, but it had also awakened something I didn't know I had. I would not let Corinne win. And slowly, a plan began to take shape in my mind, quiet and precise, fueled by the betrayal I had endured. In the weeks after my birthday, I focused on myself. I threw myself into work, personal projects, and things I loved but had ignored. I wanted to rebuild my confidence and strength, to remind myself that my worth didn't depend on Corinne or anyone else. Every small accomplishment gave me a little more courage, a little more clarity. While I worked on myself, I began observing Corinne more closely. I noticed the little things she relied on, her pride, the way she cared about what others thought, and her relationships that were more about appearances than real connection. I realized these were the weaknesses I could use if I ever needed to. It wasn't about revenge yet, it was about understanding her patterns, her habits, and the ways she tried to control everything around her. At the same time, I started reconnecting with friends and colleagues who had seen glimpses of who I really was but never knew the full story. Slowly, I built a quiet network of people who respected me, who appreciated my honesty and reliability. I didn't boast or demand attention, I simply showed my true self, letting my character speak for me. It felt good to have allies who genuinely cared and could see past Corinne's manipulations. During this time, I also learned patience. I realized that immediate confrontation wouldn't help me. Instead, I needed to strengthen myself and wait for the right moments. Every interaction with Corinne, every observation of her behavior, became part of my understanding. I was no longer just reacting to her actions, I was planning, quietly, strategically. Each day, my confidence grew. I felt more in control of my emotions and my life. The humiliation I had felt started to transform into focus, determination, and resilience. I wasn't just plotting for revenge, I was growing into someone who could handle betrayal with strength, someone who could rise above manipulation and cruelty. By the end of this period, I knew I was ready. I wasn't acting out of anger anymore. I was calm, measured, and deliberate. Corinne's weaknesses were clear, my support system was in place, and my mind was focused. The quiet plotting had begun, and I knew that when the time came, I would make every move count. Corinne began acting as if she had won completely. She walked through family gatherings with a confident smile, telling stories that made her look clever and me look foolish. She didn't see that her arrogance was drawing attention in the wrong way. People started noticing her pride and self-importance, and some friends and relatives began to keep their distance. Her need to be the center of attention was turning into isolation. At work, her colleagues started noticing the same thing. Corinne would brag about accomplishments and take credit for group efforts. At first, people were polite, but over time, they began to see through her show. Her relationships that had seemed strong began to strain. No one wanted to deal with someone who was constantly seeking attention or making others feel small. Her arrogance was creating cracks everywhere. Watching her from the sidelines, I remembered smaller moments from our past. How she had always taken the last slice of cake when I was younger, pretending she didn't notice I wanted it. How she had shared embarrassing stories about me at school or among family members, hiding them as jokes. Each small betrayal added up, forming a pattern of her cruelty and competitiveness. These memories no longer made me sad, they made me stronger and more determined. I remained calm as I watched her stumble socially and professionally. I didn't confront her or make a scene. Instead, I focused on my own growth, quietly planning my next moves. Each time she bragged or humiliated someone else, it reminded me of the control she thought she had, but she didn't realize how much I had changed. I was patient, observing, and learning, waiting for the right moment to act. The more arrogant Corinne became, the more obvious her weaknesses were. Her pride made her careless, and her obsession with appearing perfect made people see through her mask. I didn't need to rush. I was building my strategy quietly, letting her underestimate me at every step. What she saw as victory was only temporary, and I knew that when the right time came, her arrogance would become the key to her own downfall.
I waited for the right moment, knowing that patience would make my move more effective. The opportunity came at a small family dinner, where Corinne began telling a story about one of her great achievements in front of everyone. She was speaking confidently, clearly expecting admiration and attention. I stayed quiet at first, letting her talk. Then, calmly, I mentioned a small fact that contradicted her story, something true, but not obvious to everyone. It was subtle, something only a few people knew, yet it cast doubt on her version of events. The room went quiet for a moment. Corinne's confident smile faltered as she realized she had been quietly challenged. I could see it in her eyes. Paranoia creeping in, self-doubt starting to replace arrogance. She tried to recover, laughing nervously and brushing it off, but the damage was done. People who had only seen her showy side began to notice a different truth. The whispers weren't loud, but they were there, and I could feel the shift. My allies, friends, and relatives who had quietly supported me now looked at me with respect, understanding that I had handled the situation with intelligence rather than anger. Corinne became cautious after that. She started second-guessing herself, overthinking every word and gesture. I didn't say more than necessary. My calmness made her overanalyze, turning her own mind against her. Each small slip she made confirmed her growing paranoia, and I kept watching, learning even more about how she reacted under pressure. The tension in the room was electric. Everyone could feel the unspoken battle between us, though no one fully understood it. I didn't act recklessly or loudly. My goal was not humiliation but control. Every step was calculated, precise, and measured. As I left that dinner, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The first strike had worked exactly as I had planned. Corinne was rattled, my support network had strengthened, and the stakes had grown higher. I knew the real challenge was still ahead, and everyone, including Corinne, was waiting to see what I would do next. The suspense of what would happen next hung in the air, leaving me focused and ready for the next move. While going through some old family documents and letters, I stumbled upon something I had never known before, a secret from years ago that Corinne had hidden carefully. It was small but damaging, something that revealed how she had manipulated situations to her advantage, often at the expense of others. I realized immediately that this could change everything. I didn't rush or confront her angrily. Instead, I took my time, thinking through how to use this information strategically. I planned conversations and gatherings where I could casually bring up truths that highlighted her behavior without directly attacking her. Each revelation was subtle but effective, planting doubt in the minds of people who had always admired Corinne. The first time she noticed the effect, it was subtle too. She asked me why people seemed to question her stories, why some friends now looked uncertain when she spoke. I stayed calm, offering no direct accusation, only letting her actions and past decisions speak for themselves. I could see panic starting to creep into her expressions, the same way she had once made me panic at my birthday. As the days went by, the impact grew. Colleagues, friends, and even family members began to question Corinne's honesty and reliability. She tried to defend herself, but her explanations sounded weaker with each attempt. For the first time, she realized she had underestimated me. The person she had dismissed and tried to humiliate had quietly grown stronger, wiser, and more patient than she could have imagined. I never resorted to cruelty or insults. I kept my dignity intact, letting the truth do the work. Watching her unravel, seeing the disbelief and frustration in her eyes, I felt a deep satisfaction. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was justice, balanced and fair, exposing the arrogance and manipulations she had used against me for so long. By the end, Corinne was isolated and cautious, her confidence shaken. I felt a sense of closure, knowing I had achieved the result I wanted without losing myself in anger or malice. I had proven that patience, intelligence, and self-respect were more powerful than cruelty, and finally, the betrayal that had haunted me for years was answered.
After Corinne's secret came to light, the consequences hit her in every part of her life. Friends who had once admired her began to keep their distance, quietly losing trust in her. At work, people questioned her judgment and honesty, and she lost opportunities she had expected to come easily. Even within the family, relatives started seeing her differently, realizing she had often manipulated situations to make herself look better. I noticed the changes quietly, without celebrating or boasting. It was satisfying in a calm, quiet way, seeing fairness restored without me having to act aggressively. People began looking at me with respect, some even coming to me privately to say they had always sensed my integrity and honesty, and now they could see it clearly. I felt a sense of vindication, knowing that my patience and careful planning had turned the tables without me compromising my own values. Emotionally, I felt a deep relief. The hurt I had carried from the public humiliation, the whispered laughter, and the years of subtle cruelty finally began to lift. The betrayal I had suffered was acknowledged indirectly by how people now treated Corinne, and I didn't have to say a word to make my point. It felt complete, a quiet justice that was fair and measured, not cruel or spiteful. As I reflected on everything, I realized how much stronger I had become. The pain, the embarrassment, and the betrayal had all taught me resilience. I had learned to trust my instincts, to observe carefully, and to act strategically rather than react impulsively. I understood that strength didn't always come from confrontation, it often came from patience, intelligence, and self-respect. Looking back, I saw that the experience had changed me in a positive way. I was no longer the sister who could be publicly humiliated or quietly undermined. I had earned respect and built deeper connections with people who valued me for who I truly was. The lessons of betrayal and revenge had taught me more about myself than I could have imagined. In the end, I didn't just survive the betrayal, I grew stronger because of it, and the justice I achieved felt completely right. Looking back on everything, I realized how far I had come. The humiliation on my birthday, the years of subtle teasing and betrayal, and the constant feeling of being undermined by Corinne had all left deep marks. At first, it felt impossible to move past the pain, but over time, I learned to use it as motivation. Every moment of embarrassment had pushed me to become stronger, more aware, and more determined. I no longer felt controlled by Corinne's actions. The fear, the doubt, and the hurt she had caused could no longer define me. I had taken back my sense of self, my confidence, and my dignity. What mattered now was who I was, not how she tried to make me feel. I had grown in ways she could never have imagined, and that growth was my true victory. Through this journey, I discovered what resilience really meant. It wasn't just enduring the pain, it was using it to become smarter, calmer, and more capable. I had learned to observe carefully, act strategically, and maintain my integrity even when someone tried to tear me down. I realized that personal growth often comes from the most difficult experiences, and that standing up to toxic people doesn't have to mean fighting with anger, it can mean rising above them quietly and confidently. I also understood the value of patience. By waiting, watching, and planning, I had turned what seemed like hopeless situations into opportunities for triumph. I had gained allies who respected me for my character, and I had seen firsthand how intelligence and composure could achieve what brute force or anger never could. Life had shown me that nothing is predictable. People we trust can betray us, and situations we think are fixed can change completely. But strength, wisdom, and careful thinking always give us an edge. I had experienced betrayal, humiliation, and emotional pain, but I had emerged victorious. I was no longer the sister who could be broken or belittled. I had grown, I had learned, and I had proven that no one's cruelty could ever define my life. In the end, I knew one thing clearly: life may be unpredictable, but intelligence, patience, and inner strength always prevail.